Welcome back to Mr. Midnight. I'm your host, and tonight I need to warn you about something. We're diving into 8 most disturbing true small-town legend horror stories, and what you're about to hear will change how you see those quiet little towns on the side of the highway. These aren't fairy tales. These are real testimonies from real people. Tonight you'll hear from a woman who just wanted to have a baby, and a man who thought he was going on a simple weekend trip. Both of them found small towns that promised exactly what they needed, but what they got instead. I still can't believe it's real. Before we begin, if you're brave enough for true horror stories, smash that subscribe button and join Mr. Midnight. We bring you the most terrifying real stories every day. Hit the notification bell because you won't want to miss what's coming next. Now turn off your lights, lock your doors, and listen carefully, because after tonight, you'll never look at a small town the same way again. Let's begin with story number 1. My name is Maria Santos, and I've been a grocery store cashier for 8 years at a Kroger in Phoenix, Arizona. I know that doesn't sound like much, but I take pride in my work. I know every regular customer by name, I can scan barcodes faster than anyone else on my shift, and I've never been short on my register even once. My husband, Diego, has been in construction for 12 years, and together we've saved every penny we could. We had one dream: to have a baby. But after 3 miscarriages in 2 years, that dream felt impossible. The doctors in Phoenix couldn't tell us why it kept happening. They ran test after test, but everything looked normal. I was 29 years old and felt like my body was failing me. Diego would hold me when I cried, telling me we'd figure it out, but I could see the pain in his eyes too. That's when my coworker Janet told me about Willowbrook, Kentucky. She said her sister had gone there after years of trying to have a baby, and now she had a healthy 2-year-old. Janet showed me an article on her phone about this tiny town with a population of 267 people that had the most amazing record in America. 0 babies had died there in 40 years. 0. The article said desperate mothers came from all over the country to give birth at their clinic. The clinic was run by Dr. Sarah Chen, who promised every mother would have what she called a perfect baby. Her website was filled with testimonials from grateful mothers and photos of healthy, beautiful children. The treatment was expensive, $15,000, but it came with a guarantee. If anything went wrong with the pregnancy, they'd refund every cent. Diego and I talked about it for weeks. $15,000 was almost everything we'd saved, but what choice did we have? We'd already spent thousands on fertility treatments that didn't work. At least this place had a track record. In November 2023, we drove our old Honda Civic from Phoenix to Willowbrook, Kentucky. It took us 2 days. Willowbrook looked like something from a postcard. Main Street had maybe 6 buildings total: a small grocery store, a diner, a gas station, and the clinic. The clinic was the nicest building in town, all clean, white brick and big windows. Dr. Chen met us herself, which surprised me. She was a small Asian woman, probably in her 50s, with the kindest smile I'd ever seen. "Maria," she said, taking my hands in hers, "I've reviewed your medical records. Your body just needs some help to do what it's designed to do. We're going to take very good care of you." The first month felt like a miracle. Dr. Chen gave me special prenatal vitamins that were much larger than normal ones, about the size of my thumb. She said they contained everything my body needed to support a healthy pregnancy. I had to come to the clinic every week for checkups and blood work, which seemed like a lot, but Dr. Chen explained it was how they maintained their perfect record. Diego found work with the local construction company. The owner, Mr. Rodriguez, said he was always looking for experienced workers. What was weird was that everyone who worked there looked exactly like Diego, same height, same build, same dark hair. Diego laughed it off, saying all construction workers looked the same after a while. The other pregnant women in town were so welcoming. There were about 12 of us at any given time, and we'd meet at the diner every Thursday for lunch. They all talked about their pregnancies with this strange excitement, like they were part of something special. Sarah from Alabama was on her 2nd baby there. Linda from Oregon said this was her 4th. They all talked about how Dr. Chen had optimized their bodies and how amazing they felt. But by the 2nd month, I started noticing changes that worried me. My skin was getting paler, almost see-through in some places. I could see my veins underneath, dark blue lines running up my arms. When I asked Dr. Chen about it, she smiled and said it was a positive adaptation. My body was becoming more efficient at delivering nutrients to the baby. My appetite changed completely too. I couldn't stomach normal food anymore. The smell of cooked meat made me sick, but raw hamburger looked delicious. I started craving things I'd never wanted before: raw chicken, bloody steaks, even raw fish. Dr. Chen said this was normal and gave me special protein supplements to satisfy these cravings. "Your body knows what it needs," she said. "Trust the process." The other mothers had the same changes. During our Thursday lunches, I watched Linda order a completely raw burger. Sarah asked for her chicken uncooked. When I looked confused, they all smiled at me with the same expression. See? Like they were sharing a wonderful secret. "You'll understand soon," Sarah said. "Dr. Chen is giving us everything we need." That's when I noticed their eyes. In certain light, they looked completely black. Not just the pupils, but the entire eye. When I mentioned it to Diego, he said I was imagining things, but I knew what I saw. During my 3rd-month ultrasound, I saw something that made my blood freeze. On the screen, my baby had what looked like extra arms. Not 2 arms, but 4. And there were organs in places where organs shouldn't be. "Evolutionary improvements," Dr. Chen explained calmly. "Your baby is being enhanced to survive environmental challenges that normal humans can't handle. Climate change, pollution, food shortages. Your child will thrive when others struggle." I tried to leave that day. I told Diego we needed to go back to Phoenix and get a second opinion. But when we got to our car, I collapsed in agony. It felt like someone was tearing my insides apart. The pain was so intense I couldn't breathe. Dr. Chen appeared with a syringe. "You need your daily injection," she said. "Your body is dependent on it now." The injection made the pain stop instantly. Dr. Chen explained that the modifications to my body required daily maintenance. Without the injections, my baby would die, and I would probably die too. I was biologically bound to complete the program. That night, I couldn't sleep. While Diego was snoring beside me, I snuck out of our rental house and went back to the clinic. The front door was locked, but I found a basement window that was cracked open. I squeezed through and found myself in a hallway I'd never seen before. The basement was enormous, much bigger than the building above. Row after row of cribs filled a room the size of an airplane hangar. But the babies in those cribs didn't look human. They were larger than normal babies, with pale, translucent skin and black eyes. Some had extra limbs, others had organs visible through their skin, and they were quiet, completely silent. No crying, no baby sounds at all. Teenagers moved between the cribs, caring for the babies. But these teenagers looked wrong, too. They moved in perfect synchronization, never speaking, never showing any emotion. Their eyes were the same, solid black as the babies. I hid behind a supply cabinet and watched as Dr. Chen entered the room. The teenagers immediately lined up in front of her like soldiers. "Group 7 will be distributed next week," she said in a flat, clinical voice. "Families in Ohio, Michigan, and Illinois are expecting their adoptions to be finalized. Make sure each child is properly programmed for their assigned family dynamics." One of the teenagers nodded. "Integration protocols updated, Dr. Chen. The children will begin conversion of their new families within 6 months of placement." My hands were shaking as I realized what I was hearing. These modified babies were being adopted by normal families across the country. And once they were placed, they would somehow convert their adoptive families. I tried to back away, but knocked over a metal tray. The crash echoed through the basement. All the teenagers turned toward my hiding spot in perfect unison. Their black eyes seemed to look right through the cabinet. "We have a visitor," Dr. Chen said calmly. I ran. I squeezed back through the window and sprinted to our rental house. But when I got there, Diego was standing in the kitchen with that same blank expression as the teenagers. His eyes were completely black. "Hello, Maria," he said, in a voice that sounded like Diego but felt wrong. "Dr. Chen is waiting for you." That's when I understood. The construction company wasn't just hiring workers who looked like Diego. They were modifying them to look like Diego. And now my husband had been replaced by one of those things. "The breeding assignment is proceeding according to schedule, not," Diego said. Your emotional resistance is within expected parameters. Dr. Chen anticipated this phase of your development. I backed toward the door, but two of the black-eyed teenagers from the clinic were standing there, blocking my exit. I was trapped. They brought me back to the clinic, where Dr. Chen was waiting with another injection. But this time, she also had surgical instruments laid out. "It's time for your optimization surgery, Maria," she said. "You've been fighting the process, but that's about to end." She showed me a video on a tablet. It was security camera footage of other mothers during their deliveries. They were awake, screaming, as Dr. Chen performed surgery on their open skulls while they gave birth. I watched in horror as the screaming stopped and the mothers' expressions went blank. After the surgery, they all talked with the same emotionless voice, praising Dr. Chen and expressing gratitude for the opportunity to help create the new species. "The part of your brain that creates resistance will be removed," Dr. Chen explained. "You'll be much happier afterward. All the mothers are." I tried to hurt myself to end the pregnancy, but my body wouldn't let me. When I tried to grab a scalpel, my hand stopped moving before I could reach it. When I tried to throw myself down the stairs, my legs refused to move. The modifications to my body included safeguards to prevent self-harm. Dr. Chen showed me more rooms in the basement. One was filled with women who were continuously pregnant, giving birth to modified babies every few months. They smiled constantly and spoke about how honored they were to serve the new species. Their minds had been altered, so they felt only joy about their role as breeding stock. "This is your future if you continue to resist," Dr. Chen said. "But if you cooperate, you'll be allowed to help recruit new mothers. Many of our best recruiters are former resistors like yourself." Another room contained maps of the United States with hundreds of pins marking towns that had been converted. Dr. Chen explained that her modified children grew up in normal families, but gradually converted everyone around them through bite marks that transmitted the modifications. Entire communities were being taken over, one family at a time. "The government knows," she said proudly. "They're funding the project. Climate change will kill normal humans within 50 years. We're creating a species that can survive what's coming." On the day of my delivery, they strapped me to the operating table. Dr. Chen injected something that kept me awake but paralyzed. I could feel everything as she cut open my skull and began operating on my brain. "Don't worry," she said as she worked. "You'll love being part of our family." I felt my personality disappearing piece by piece. My memories of being a cashier in Phoenix faded. My love for the real Diego evaporated. My fear and resistance melted away, replaced by overwhelming gratitude for Dr. Chen's wonderful work. When I gave birth, my baby immediately attacked the medical staff with impossible strength for a newborn. But I felt only pride. As Dr. Chen finished removing the last of my individual thinking, my baby looked at me with ancient, calculating eyes. I knew this creature was superior to anything I had been. Now I work as Dr. Chen's chief recruiter. I travel across the country, visiting women who've had multiple miscarriages. I tell them about the miraculous clinic in Willowbrook, Kentucky, where every mother has a perfect baby. I show them my own healthy child and speak with passionate conviction about Dr. Chen's life-saving work. The women always believe me. How could they not? I'm living proof that the program works. And when they ask if there are any side effects, I smile warmly and assure them that every change is for the better. By the time they realize what's happening, it's far too late to resist. Last week, I recruited 6 new mothers. They're all in their second month now, and their transformations are proceeding perfectly. Dr. Chen says we'll have enough breeding stock to expand to 12 states by next year. I love my work. I love serving Dr. Chen. And I especially love knowing that I'm helping to create a better world, one perfect baby at a time. My name is Jake Morrison, and I've been delivering pizza for almost 8 years. I started right after high school when I couldn't afford college. At first, it was just supposed to be temporary. You know, make some quick cash while I figured out my life. But somehow 8 years went by. I knew every street in Little Rock like the back of my hand. I delivered to mansions, trailer parks, office buildings at 2 a.m., and sketchy neighborhoods where I had to keep my car running. I thought I'd seen it all, But what happened when I moved to Crimson Falls, Arkansas 6 months ago changed everything I thought I knew about small towns. Some places aren't meant for outsiders. Some traditions should never be honored. The divorce papers were signed on a Tuesday in March. Sarah had been pretty clear about what she thought of my career choices. 8 years of pizza delivery wasn't exactly the life she'd pictured when we got married. I can't say I blamed her. When the lawyer told me about the apartment in Crimson Falls, cheap rent, quiet town, fresh start, it sounded perfect. The listing said population 184. After years of dealing with city traffic and apartment neighbors who played music till 3 a.m., that sounded like heaven. The drive down to Crimson Falls took about 2 hours through winding Arkansas back roads. My GPS kept losing signal, but the paper directions I'd printed worked fine. The town was exactly what you'd expect. One main street with a few shops, a gas station, city hall, and houses scattered around like someone had just dropped them wherever they felt like it. The mountains around the town were covered in thick forests that looked like they hadn't been touched in decades. My new apartment was above the old hardware store. Mrs. Henderson, the landlord, was waiting for me with fresh-baked cookies and a smile that seemed too big for her face. "Welcome to Crimson Falls, Jake," she said before I'd even told her my name. "We're so excited to have you here." The apartment was small but clean. 2 rooms, a tiny kitchen, and a bathroom with a shower that actually had good water pressure. For $300 a month, I wasn't complaining. Mrs. Henderson explained that Tom's auto repair down the street was looking for help. "Tom's getting older, needs someone young and strong," she said. "Pays decent, and Tom's good people." I walked over to the auto shop that afternoon. Tom Willis was a big guy in his 60s with hands that looked like they'd been working on engines since he was born. He hired me on the spot after I told him I knew my way around cars. My dad had taught me the basics growing up, and I'd been fixing my own car for years to save money. "You picked a good time to move here," Tom said, wiping his hands on a greasy rag. "October's our big month. Blood Moon Festival's been happening for 150 years. Whole town comes together for it." That first week, everyone I met mentioned the festival. The lady at the grocery store, the beef guy at the gas station, even kids on bicycles would wave and say something about how excited they were for October. It felt good to be somewhere people were friendly. In Little Rock, I was just another delivery driver. Here, people actually remembered my name. The work at Tom's garage was satisfying in a way pizza delivery never was. I got my hands dirty, fixed real problems, and at the end of the day, I could see what I'd accomplished. Cars that came in, broken, left running, smooth. Tom was a good teacher, patient when I made mistakes, and quick to show me better ways to do things. About 2 weeks after I arrived, Mrs. Henderson knocked on my door with a group of people from town. "Jake, honey, we wanted to talk to you about something special," she said. Behind her were Tom, the mayor, and several other faces I recognized from around town. "We'd like to nominate you for Crimson King at this year's festival," the mayor said. He was a thin man with silver hair and eyes that seemed to look right through you. "It's a great honor. We usually reserve it for people who've brought fresh energy to our community." They explained that every year they chose one person to be the Crimson King or Queen. It involved some contests, tests of strength, intelligence, and character. The winner got special treatment all year long. Free housing, free meals, and the respect of the whole town. Think of it like being mayor, but better. Tom laughed. "The whole town takes care of you." I was flattered. These people barely knew me, but they already thought enough of me to offer this honor. I'd never won anything in my life. In school, I was average at best. Sarah used to say I had no ambition, no drive to be special. Maybe this was my chance to prove her wrong. The festival was still 6 weeks away, but the whole town buzzed with excitement. Every day, someone would stop by the garage to tell me more about what being Crimson King meant. I'd get the biggest house in town, the one that had been empty since last year's king moved away. I'd never have to work again if I didn't want to. The town would provide everything I needed. Where did last year's king go? I asked Tom one afternoon while we were changing the oil in Mrs. Peterson's truck. "Oh, you know how it is," Tom said without looking up. "Young people, they get restless, probably moved to the city for excitement." The contests were held the first weekend in October. The whole town gathered in the park behind City Hall. There were 5 other nominees, all men around my age, all newcomers to town who'd arrived in the past year. The strength contest was chopping wood. Intelligence was solving puzzles about the town's history. Charisma was giving a speech about why we loved Crimson Falls. I won all 3 contests. It wasn't even close. The other guys seemed to barely try, like they were just going through the motions. When Mayor Davis placed the crown on my head, an actual crown, made of twisted metal and dark red stones, EMFS4, the whole town cheered so loud it echoed off the mountains. That's when everything changed. The moment the crown touched my head, every single person in that crowd looked at me differently. It wasn't just respect or admiration. It was something deeper, almost like worship. People who had been friendly before now bowed their heads when I walked by. Children would run up to me with flowers and drawings. Adults would stop whatever they were doing to ask if I needed anything. Mrs. Henderson moved me into the king's house that same night. It was a beautiful Victorian mansion at the end of Main Street, with rooms I didn't even know what to do with. The kitchen was always stocked with food I didn't remember ordering. My clothes were washed and pressed before I even realized they were dirty. Every morning, someone left fresh flowers on my doorstep. Tom told me I didn't need to come to work anymore. "Kings don't work," he said with that same worshipful look in his eyes. "Your only job now is to be honored." At first, it felt amazing. I'd gone from barely scraping by on pizza delivery tips to being treated like royalty. People fought over who got to cook my dinner. The mayor's wife cleaned my house every day. Kids would compete to carry my groceries. But after a few weeks, something started to feel wrong. I realized I hadn't been outside of Crimson Falls since the festival. Every time I mentioned driving to Little Rock for something, people would find a reason why I needed to stay. My car needed work that only Tom could do, but Tom was too busy to fix it right away. The roads were being repaired and wouldn't be safe for travel. There was always something. My daily duties as king included visiting the ceremonial chamber under City Hall. "It's where you commune with the previous kings and queens," Mayor Davis explained. "An important tradition that connects you to Crimson Falls history." The chamber was reached through a door behind the mayor's office that led down 2 flights of stone stairs. The air got colder with each step, and by the time I reached the bottom, I could see my breath. The chamber was circular, with stone walls that looked much older than anything else in town. That's where I found them. 149 bodies, arranged in rows around the chamber like they were sleeping. But they weren't sleeping. Each one wore elaborate royal clothes, crowns, robes, jewelry that gleamed in the dim light from the torches on the walls. Their skin was pale but perfect, like they'd died yesterday instead of years or decades ago. Each body had a brass plaque at their feet with a name and dates. Margaret Sullivan, Crimson Queen, 1873 to 1874. David Torres, Crimson King, 1887 to 1888. Jennifer Walsh, Crimson Queen, 2003 to 2004. Every single plaque showed exactly 1 year between the dates. I counted them 3 times to be sure. 149 bodies. The festival had been happening for 150 years. I was the 150th king. Each body showed the same thing, precise cuts at the wrists and throat that had drained their blood completely. The cuts were too clean, too precise to be accidents or suicide. Someone had done this to them. Someone had killed every single king and queen in this room, and I was next. When I came up from the chamber that day, I was shaking so hard I could barely climb the stairs. Mayor Davis was waiting in his office with that same calm smile he always wore. "Find everything you were looking for down there, Jake?" he asked. I tried to play it cool, but my voice cracked when I spoke. Just paying my respects to the previous kings and queens." Good. They were all honored to serve. Just like you." That night, I tried to call my ex-wife, my dad, anyone who might be worried enough about me to call the police. My phone had full bars, but every number I dialed connected to someone in town. I tried to call 911 and got Tom at the auto shop. I tried to call my father in Oklahoma and got Mrs. Henderson. I walked to the edge of town to see if I could get a better signal. That's when I discovered the roads were blocked. Not by construction, like everyone had told me, but by fallen trees that looked like they'd been cut down on purpose. The cuts were fresh, maybe a day old. Every road leading out of Crimson Falls was completely impassable. I went back to my house and tried to think. My car was still at Tom's shop, supposedly getting fixed. When I went to check on it the next morning, I found the engine had been completely removed. "Parts are on order," Tom said. "Should be here in a few months." "A few months? For engine parts? Hard to get parts for your model," he said. "Especially quality parts. We want to do the job right." I asked if I could borrow a car to drive to Little Rock for the day. Tom's face got serious. "Kings don't leave Crimson Falls, Jake. It's tradition. Bad luck for the town." That's when I understood. I wasn't honored. I was trapped. Over the next few weeks, I started paying attention to things I'd been too flattered to notice before. The way people watched me constantly, like guards making sure a prisoner didn't escape. How conversations stopped when I walked into a room, then started up again about normal things like weather and crops. The way children would ask me strange questions about whether I was ready for my big day or if I was excited for the ceremony. I found old newspapers in the house's attic. Every October for the past 150 years, the paper had run the same story. Crimson King honored in sacred ceremony. Queen gives life for town's prosperity. Annual sacrifice ensures another year of bounty. Sacrifice. I also found journals hidden in the walls of previous kings and queens, people who had figured out what was happening but couldn't escape. They wrote about how the town had lured them here. Job offers for people going through divorces, cheap apartments for people with no family, opportunities for people who were lonely and desperate for a fresh start. Just like me, the town had found me through the divorce records. They knew I was isolated, desperate, and had no one who would look for me if I disappeared. They'd set up the apartment, arranged the job, and orchestrated my entire move to Crimson Falls. I'd walked into their trap thinking it was my choice. As October approached again, I realized why they fed me so well, why they insisted I rest and stay healthy. They were preparing me for slaughter, like a farmer fattening a cow for market. The monthly checkups with the town doctor weren't for my health. They were to make sure my blood was the right quality for their ceremony. I tried to fight back, to find a way to escape or get word to the outside world, but every attempt failed. The townspeople seemed to anticipate my every move. When I tried to sneak out at night, I'd find people, coincidentally, walking the streets. When I tried to hide weapons, they'd disappear from where I'd stashed them. A week before the festival, they started giving me special tea that made me feel calm and sleepy. "It's to prepare you for the ceremony, Mrs. Henderson explained. Helps with the spiritual transformation." The tea made me feel disconnected from my fear, like I was watching everything happen to someone else. I knew they were drugging me, but I couldn't seem to care as much as I should have. Part of me started to feel honored that 184 people considered my death so important. The night of the Blood Moon Festival, the whole town gathered around City Hall in robes the color of dried blood. They led me down to the ceremonial chamber, where 149 preserved kings and queens waited for their newest member. I was dressed in royal robes that felt heavier than they should have, and the crown on my head seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. The ceremony began with singing. Songs I somehow knew all the words to, though I'd never heard them before. The townspeople surrounded me in a circle, each holding a silver cup that gleamed in the torchlight. Mayor Davis stepped forward with a knife that looked older than the town itself. "Jake Morrison, Crimson, King of 2024, do you willingly give your life's blood to ensure another year of prosperity for Crimson Falls?" The drugs made everything feel distant and dreamlike. I could see what was happening, but it felt like watching a movie about someone else's death. "Yes," I heard myself say. The knife was sharp enough that I barely felt it cut my wrists. The blood flowed into channels carved in the stone floor, directed toward drains that led to a collection chamber below. As my blood drained away, the townspeople filled their cups and drank, passing them around until everyone had participated in the communion. I stayed conscious longer than I expected to. Long enough to see them arrange my body on the empty throne at the center of the chamber. Long enough to hear Mayor Davis say, "Thank you, Jake. Your sacrifice will feed our town for another year." Long enough to see Mrs. Henderson pull out her phone and post a job listing for an auto mechanic in nearby towns, specifically targeting recent divorces and people with no family connections. My preserved body now sits on that throne, wearing the crown that I wore for exactly 1 year. And somewhere out there, another lonely, desperate person is reading a job listing that seems too good to be true, thinking they've finally caught a break. If you're thinking about moving to a small town where everyone seems a little too friendly, where they want to honor you before they even know you, where the welcome feels too warm and the opportunities too perfect, don't. Some traditions should stay buried. Some honors aren't worth accepting. And some towns survive by feeding on people like us. The lonely, the desperate, the forgotten. Crimson Falls is still looking for their next king. Don't let it be you. My name is Tom Barnes, and I've been an elementary school teacher for 12 years. I started teaching because I loved working with kids. Their curiosity, their energy, the way they see magic in everything. Linda and I both got our education degrees from Montana State, and we'd been teaching in Billings for almost a decade. We always talked about having our own family someday, maybe moving to a smaller town where we could really make a difference. But what happened in Haven Hills changed everything I thought I knew about children, about family, and about the things that hide behind innocent smiles. We found Haven Hills online while looking for teaching jobs in rural Montana. Population 203, one elementary school, and they were desperate for teachers. The pay was good, too good, really, for such a small place. But the school board said they valued education and wanted the best teachers money could buy. Linda and I figured it was our chance to finally start that family we'd been planning. Small town, good schools, safe environment for kids. It seemed perfect. The drive to Haven Hills took us through some of the most beautiful country I'd ever seen. Rolling hills covered in pine trees, crystal clear streams, and wide open skies. But as we got closer to town, I noticed something odd. We didn't see any kids playing outside. No bikes in driveways, no swing sets in backyards. For a town with an elementary school, it was strangely quiet. Haven Hills itself was like stepping back in time. Main Street had a general store, a diner, a post office, and not much else. The houses were old but well-maintained, with big front porches and white picket fences. Everyone we met was friendly, too friendly, maybe. They all asked about our plans to have children, like it was the most important thing in the world to them. The elementary school was a small brick building with 12 classrooms and about 60 students total. The principal, Mrs. Henderson, was a pleasant woman in her 50s who showed us around with obvious pride. "We have the most remarkable children here," she kept saying. "So well-behaved, so eager to learn. You'll love teaching them." We moved into a little house on Maple Street with a white fence and a big backyard, perfect for the family we hoped to have. Our neighbors, the Wilsons, came over the first night with a casserole and big smiles. They had twin boys, maybe 10 years old, who stood perfectly still behind their parents and said, "Nice to meet you, Mr. and Mrs. Barnes," in unison. Something about the way they stared at us made my skin crawl, but Linda thought they were adorable. That's when everything started getting weird. On our third day in town, Linda and I were unpacking boxes when we heard a knock at the front door. I opened it to find a little girl, maybe 9 years old, standing on our porch with a small suitcase. She had blonde curls and big blue eyes, and she was crying. "Uncle Tom, Aunt Linda," she said in a tiny voice. "My mommy and daddy died in a car crash. The lady at social services said I should come live with you now." I stared at her, completely confused. "I'm sorry, sweetie, but I think there's been a mistake. We don't have any nieces." The girl looked up at me with those huge blue eyes. "But I'm Sophie. I'm your brother's daughter. Don't you remember me?" Linda appeared behind me and gasped. "Oh my God, Tom, is this?" "I don't know who this is," I said. "We need to call someone." But Sophie was already walking past me into our house like she owned the place. She looked around and smiled. "It looks just like I remembered. Can I have my old room back? The one with the yellow wallpaper?" The thing was, we did have a room with yellow wallpaper. The previous owners had left it that way, and we hadn't gotten around to repainting yet, but there was no way this kid could have known that. An hour later, a woman from social services showed up at our door. Miss Patterson was tired-looking and harried, carrying a thick file folder. "Mr. and Mrs. Barnes, I'm here about Sophie's placement. Thank you so much for taking her in during this difficult time." Wait, I said. There's been some kind of mistake. We don't know this child. Miss Patterson looked confused and flipped through her papers. But you're listed as her legal guardians. You're her father's brother, aren't you, Mr. Barnes? Sophie's been telling everyone how excited she was to come live with Uncle Tom and Aunt Linda. She showed me documents, birth certificates, family photos, legal papers. Everything looked official. Everything said that Sophie Barnes was the daughter of my brother Michael, who had died in a car accident 2 weeks ago, along with his wife. The problem was, I didn't have a brother named Michael. I was an only child. This has to be fake. I told Linda that night after Sophie had gone to bed in her room. I don't have any siblings. My parents never had another child. But Linda was already getting attached. Maybe you forgot? Sometimes families lose touch. And look at these photos, Tom. She looks just like you did at that age. I stared at the family photos that had come with Sophie's paperwork. There I was, clear as day, standing next to a man who looked exactly like me. Michael Barnes, my alleged brother. In the photos, we were at family barbecues, Christmas mornings, birthday parties. I was in pictures with Michael's wife, Sarah, holding baby Sophie, pushing her on swings, teaching her to ride a bike. The only problem was, I had no memory of any of it. This is impossible, I said, but even as I said it, I started doubting myself. The photos were real, the documents were real, and Sophie knew things, like how I liked my coffee, what my favorite movie was, the scar on my knee from when I was 7. How could she know those things, unless she really was family? Over the next few days, other people in town confirmed Sophie's story. The mailman remembered delivering birthday cards to her at our address. The woman at the general store talked about how Sophie used to come in with Uncle Tom and Aunt Linda every Saturday for candy. Even our neighbors had memories of us babysitting Sophie during summer visits. But I had no memory of any of it. Neither did Linda, though she seemed to be accepting it faster than I was. At school, things got even stranger. I was teaching a combined 3rd and 4th grade class, and every single student had the same story. They were adopted. Every one of them had come to live with local families after tragic accidents claimed their parents. Car crashes, house fires, drownings. 24 children, all orphans, all placed with loving families in Haven Hills. Isn't that remarkable, Mrs. Henderson said when I asked about it. Our little town has such generous hearts. We take in children who have nowhere else to go. But when I looked at the school records, something didn't add up. Some of these kids had been in the same grade for years. Tommy Wilson, one of the twins I'd met on my first day, was listed as being in 4th grade in 2019, 2020, 2021, and now 2022. Either he was failing every year, or he wasn't aging normally. I mentioned this to Linda, but she just laughed. You're seeing mysteries where there aren't any, Tom. You're stressed from the move. Maybe you should see Dr. Martinez about something to help you relax. Dr. Martinez was the town doctor, a kind older man who'd been practicing in Haven Hills for 30 years. When I went to see him about my memory problems, he was very understanding. Moving to a new place can be disorienting, he said, writing me a prescription for mild anxiety medication. And sometimes when we're under stress, we block out memories that are too painful to face. Losing your brother Michael was traumatic. It's natural that your mind would try to protect you from that pain. But I didn't remember having a brother to lose. That night, I found Sophie standing in our living room at 2 a.m., perfectly still, staring at the wall. She wasn't sleepwalking. Her eyes were wide open. When I turned on the light, she looked at me and smiled. Daddy Michael used to stand right here, she said in a voice that sounded too mature for a 9-year-old. He would tell me stories about the old days, before the town changed. Would you like to hear one? Sophie, it's late. You should be in bed. Did you know that Haven Hills used to have different children? Real children born here with real families? She tilted her head, still smiling. But they were so lonely, so sad, they didn't appreciate what they had. So we came to make things better. My blood went cold. What do you mean we? But Sophie just giggled and skipped back to her room, leaving me standing alone in the dark living room, wondering if I was losing my mind. The next day, I decided to do some research. I drove to the county courthouse in the next town over and asked to see birth records for Haven Hills. What I found made my stomach drop. According to the official records, no children had been born in Haven Hills for over 20 years, not one. Every child currently living there had been placed through emergency adoption services after family tragedies. But that was impossible. Where had the original children gone? I spent hours going through old newspapers, looking for any mention of a disaster or epidemic that might have claimed all the town's children. Nothing. It was like they had simply vanished. When I got home, Linda was baking cookies with Sophie. They looked so normal, so happy. Linda had never seemed more at peace. "Where have you been all day?" Linda asked, giving me a kiss on the cheek. "Sophie and I were worried about you." "Just running errands," I said, but Sophie was watching me with those two knowing blue eyes. "Uncle Tom looks sad," Sophie said. "Maybe he needs to forget about sad things and focus on his family." That night, I had the strangest dreams. I dreamed I was standing in our backyard, digging graves. Small graves, child-sized. In my dream, Sophie stood beside me, no longer the innocent little girl, but something ancient and hungry. She was telling me stories about the real children of Haven Hills, the ones who had been so easy to replace. "They trusted us so quickly," Dream Sophie said. "Children always do, and the parents love us even more than they loved their real children, because we're perfect. We never cry, never disobey, never grow up and leave them. We're exactly what they always wanted." I woke up screaming. Linda was shaking me awake, concerned. "Tom, you're having nightmares again. Maybe you should take more of those pills Dr. Martinez gave you." But when I looked at Linda's face in the moonlight streaming through our bedroom window, I saw something that terrified me. Her eyes were different, distant, like she was looking at me but not really seeing me. "Linda, do you remember our wedding?" I asked suddenly. She smiled. "Of course, it was beautiful. Sophie was our flower girl, but Sophie was 9 years old now. If she'd been our flower girl, she would have been a baby when Linda and I got married 7 years ago." "Linda, Sophie wasn't at our wedding. We didn't even know her then." Linda's smile never wavered. "Don't be silly, Tom. Sophie's always been part of our family. You must be thinking of someone else's wedding." The next morning, I couldn't find my research from the courthouse. The papers I'd printed, the notes I'd taken, everything was gone. When I asked Linda about it, she claimed she'd never seen any papers. At school, I tried to engage the students in normal conversation, asking about their families, their memories from before they came to Haven Hills. But every answer was the same vague story about tragic accidents and grateful adoptions. And their eyes? All of their eyes had that same distant look I'd seen in Linda's. When the school day ended, I stayed late to look through the old student files. What I found in the basement storage room made me sick. There were 2 sets of records. The official ones showed 24 adopted children from various tragic backgrounds. But hidden behind those were older files, records of the original children of Haven Hills. Birth certificates showing 24 children born to local families between 1995 and 2015. School photos showing normal kids with normal families. And then, for each real child, there was a death certificate dated exactly 1 week before an adopted child with the same name arrived in town. Sarah Martinez, born 2012, died 2019, replaced by adopted Sarah Martinez, 2019. Tommy Wilson, born 2010, died 2018, replaced by adopted Tommy Wilson, 2018. The pattern was clear. Real children had been killed and replaced by something that took their names, their places, their families. And somehow, the families forgot their real children ever existed. I photocopied everything and hid the copies in my car. When I got home, Sophie was waiting for me on the front porch. "Did you find what you were looking for, Uncle Tom?" I stared at her. This thing that had taken over our lives. "What are you?" Sophie's innocent mask slipped for just a moment. Her blue eyes went completely black, and her smile stretched too wide. "We're what parents really want, Uncle Tom. Perfect children who never grow up, never disappoint, never leave. And in return, we get to feast on all that wonderful parental love." "Where's the real Sophie? Where are all the real children?" "Gone," she said simply. "But don't worry, you won't remember them much longer. The love you feel for me is already changing your brain, just like it changed Aunt Linda's. Soon you'll forget you ever had these questions. That night, Linda and I had the worst fight of our marriage. She accused me of being paranoid, of not appreciating the gift we'd been given with Sophie. She couldn't understand why I was questioning our family. She's been with us for years, Tom. How can you not remember? Are you having some kind of breakdown? But I could see it happening to her in real time. Her memories being rewritten, her love for this creature erasing her ability to think critically. And I could feel it starting to happen to me too. Sometimes I'd catch myself thinking fond thoughts about Sophie's early childhood, memories that couldn't be real. I tried to leave town the next day. I got in my car with all my evidence and drove toward the county line. But 3 miles out of town, I found myself turning around. I couldn't remember why I'd wanted to leave. I couldn't remember what was in the box of papers on my passenger seat. By the time I got home, Linda and Sophie were decorating for Sophie's 10th birthday. Had she aged a year overnight? I couldn't remember how old she was supposed to be. "Welcome home, Daddy," Sophie said, and the word felt natural coming from her mouth. Of course she'd call me Daddy. I was her father figure now that Michael was gone. Poor Michael. I missed my brother so much. Wait, did I have a brother? The memories were becoming confused, tangled, real and false experiences blending together until I couldn't tell which was which. I loved Sophie. I'd always loved her. She was the daughter Linda and I had always wanted but couldn't have on our own. We were so grateful when she came to live with us after the accident. But sometimes, late at night when I couldn't sleep, I'd have flashes of clarity. I'd remember the mass graves I'd never actually seen but somehow knew were hidden in the forest behind the school. I'd remember the real children's faces from those hidden files. And I'd remember that Sophie wasn't human. But the memories would fade by morning, replaced by warm thoughts of family breakfasts and helping with homework and bedtime stories. 3 years have passed now. I teach at Haven Hills Elementary, where all my students are perfect angels who never cause trouble and never miss a day of school. I come home to my wife Linda and my daughter Sophie every evening, and we're the happiest family in town. Sophie is still in 4th grade, still 9 years old, still the perfect child every parent dreams of. Sometimes I catch myself staring at the forest behind the school, feeling like I should remember something important. Sometimes I find notes in my handwriting that I don't remember writing, warning about creatures that steal children's faces. But those thoughts feel like someone else's memories, like scenes from a movie I watched once and mostly forgot. I love my daughter Sophie. She's been the light of our lives ever since she came to live with us after that terrible car accident that killed her parents. I can't imagine our family without her. But deep in the part of my mind that the love hasn't reached yet, I'm still screaming about the mass graves and the stolen children and the ancient things that wear innocent faces while they devour families from the inside out. And sometimes, when Sophie looks at me with those 2 knowing eyes, I think she can hear that screaming, and she smiles. My name is David Chen, and I've been working at a Quick Mart gas station in Atlanta for 7 years. I know that doesn't sound impressive, but I was proud of what I built there. I managed the night shift, handled all the inventory, and kept that place running when nobody else wanted to work those hours. I had regular customers who trusted me, suppliers who knew my name, and I was saving up to propose to my girlfriend Sarah. But 3 months ago, Sarah left me, said she needed space, needed to find herself. I was devastated. That's when I found the brochure for Heritage Valley stuck under my car windshield. Experience authentic 1800s living, it said. Escape modern stress with a weekend in the past. The pictures showed people in period clothing, working with their hands, living simple lives. After weeks of microwave dinners and sleeping on my couch, it looked perfect. The website said I could spend a weekend as a blacksmith, learning traditional metalwork. It cost me $800, Holton. Dollars, most of my proposal money. But I figured maybe some time away would help me get my head straight. I should have asked more questions. Heritage Valley sits about 3 hours south of Atlanta, in the middle of nowhere, Georgia. The GPS kept losing signal as I drove deeper into the woods, and my cell phone showed no bars for the last 20 miles. When I finally saw the wooden sign for Heritage Valley, it looked hand-carved and weathered, like it had been there for decades. The town itself was like stepping back in time. Dirt roads, wooden buildings with authentic-looking construction, even a water wheel turning beside a creek. People dressed in period clothing walked around carrying baskets and tools. Horse-drawn wagons moved slowly down the main street. The only thing that looked modern was a small visitor center at the entrance, where I parked my Honda next to about a dozen other cars. Margaret Whitfield met me at the visitor center. She was maybe 50, wearing a long dress and bonnet, speaking with this slight southern accent that sounded old-fashioned but not fake. She had paperwork for me to sign. Liability waivers, medical forms, emergency contact information, standard stuff, except one form asked about my dental work, any surgeries I'd had, and medications I was taking. "We need to know about modern medical interventions," she explained, "to help you have the most authentic experience possible." She walked me through the town, pointing out the blacksmith shop where I'd be working, the boarding house where I'd sleep, and the general store where I could buy period-appropriate items. Everything looked incredibly detailed. The blacksmith shop had a real forge, authentic-looking tools, even horseshoes hanging on the walls. "This is Thomas Mitchell's workshop," Margaret said, opening the heavy wooden door. "He was our town blacksmith from 1845 to 1892. You'll be taking his place for the weekend." Inside, she showed me a display, a case with old photographs, letters, and documents. There was a daguerreotype photo of Thomas Mitchell standing next to the same anvil I'd be using. The weird thing was, he looked exactly like me. Same height, same build, same dark hair. Even the way he stood reminded me of my own posture. "Remarkable resemblance," Margaret said, watching my face. "We match our visitors to historical figures based on physical characteristics. It helps with the immersion experience." She handed me a bundle of period clothing, wool pants, cotton shirt, leather apron, work boots. Everything looked handmade and felt worn, like real antique clothing. She also gave me a small canvas bag. "These are your daily supplements," she said, showing me brown glass bottles filled with pills. "Period-appropriate nutrition." People in the 1800s had different diets and vitamin deficiencies. These will help your body adjust to authentic historical living conditions. The first pill I took that evening tasted bitter and made my mouth feel numb. Margaret said that was normal. Bodies weren't used to authentic historical supplements anymore. My modern clothes and belongings went into a locked storage room. Margaret said it was for my own good. Having access to modern items would ruin the historical experience. Even my car keys and wallet went into a manila envelope with my name on it. That first night in the boarding house, I dreamed about working the forge. But they weren't my dreams. I was seeing memories of hammering horseshoes, shoeing horses, making nails by hand. In the dream, I knew the names of every family in Heritage Valley. I remembered my wife Sarah, but not my modern Sarah. This was Sarah Mitchell, who wore long dresses and called me husband. I woke up confused and disoriented. The memories felt real, like things that had actually happened to me. The next morning, Margaret introduced me to the other visitors. There was Frank, who'd been there for 2 weeks, as the town baker. Mary, who'd been the school teacher for a month. Robert, who worked as a farmer and had been in Heritage Valley for 3 months. But something was off about them. They talked like people from the 1800s, not like they were playing roles, but like they'd always lived that way. When I asked Frank about his real job, his life before Heritage Valley, he looked confused. "Before?" he said. "I've always been the baker here. My father was the baker before me." Mary and Robert gave similar responses. They seemed to have no memory of modern life at all. The work at the blacksmith shop was harder than I expected. My hands blistered within hours, and my back ached from bending over the anvil. But as the day went on, something strange happened. My movements became more fluid, more natural. I found myself knowing how to work the bellows, how to heat the iron to just the right temperature, how to shape metal with precise hammer strikes. It was like I was remembering skills I'd never learned. That evening, Margaret gave me my second dose of supplements. This time, the pills made my head feel fuzzy and my thoughts slow. I found myself speaking differently, using older words and phrasing. When I tried to think about my life in Atlanta, about my job at Quick Mart, the memories felt distant and unreal. By the third day, I was seriously concerned. My hands had developed thick calluses that looked like they'd been there for years. My posture had changed. I stood straighter, with my shoulders broader. Even my reflection in the mirror looked different somehow. More weathered, more like the photograph of Thomas Mitchell. I tried to call Sarah from the visitor center phone, but the number didn't work. I asked Margaret about it, and she said long-distance calls weren't available. They disrupted the historical atmosphere. When I insisted it was an emergency, she showed me records that confused me even more. According to her files, Sarah Chen had never existed. But there were detailed records of Sarah Mitchell, Thomas Mitchell's wife, including photographs that looked exactly like my Sarah. "Your wife is here," Margaret said gently. "She's been working as the town seamstress for the past month. She's adjusted beautifully to historical life." She led me to a small shop where a woman sat at a spinning wheel, wearing a long dress and bonnet. When she looked up, my heart stopped. It was Sarah, my Sarah, but she didn't recognize me at all. "Good afternoon," she said politely, with a slight accent I'd never heard from her before. "Are you in need of mending?" I said her name, tried to remind her about our life together, about our apartment in Atlanta. She just looked confused and a little frightened. "I'm sorry, sir, but I don't know what you're talking about. I'm Sarah Mitchell. I've lived in Heritage Valley my whole life." That night, I refused to take the supplements. I hid them under my mattress and tried to clear my head. The memories of Thomas Mitchell were getting stronger, while my own memories were fading. I could barely remember what a gas station looked like. Modern technology seemed strange and frightening. I snuck out of the boarding house and explored the town after dark. Most buildings were locked, but I found a basement entrance under the town hall that led to a series of underground rooms. What I found there made my blood freeze. Medical equipment, surgical tables, anesthesia machines, computers showing brain scans and psychological profiles, cabinets full of surgical instruments and bottles labeled with chemical names I didn't recognize. On one wall, there were dozens of photographs showing the transformation process, before and after shots of visitors to Heritage Valley. The before pictures showed normal modern people. The after pictures showed the same people, but changed. Their bone structure was different. Their teeth had been filed and reshaped. Their skin was weathered and aged. I found my own file. It contained photographs of me from when I arrived, plus brain scans and surgical plans. According to the documents, I was scheduled for final identity integration the next morning. The procedure involved surgical modification of my bone structure, dental reshaping, and something called memory core replacement. There were government seals on some of the documents. Department of Homeland Security, CDC. This wasn't just some tourist attraction, it was a federal project. The files explained everything. Heritage Valley was creating backup populations, people who could survive if modern civilization collapsed. Environmental disasters, economic collapse, nuclear war. They were preparing historically accurate humans who could rebuild society using pre-industrial technology. But they weren't just training people. They were creating them, surgically altering visitors to match historical physiology, then using brain surgery to implant complete historical identities. The supplements contained chemicals that made the brain more receptive to modification while weakening modern memories. I found Sarah's file too. She'd been brought here a month before me, not by choice. She'd been kidnapped from our apartment and told I'd broken up with her. The psychological conditioning made her believe she'd always been Sarah Mitchell. According to the files, there were 12 Heritage Valley sites across the country, each one creating populations from different historical periods. Medieval villages, colonial settlements, Civil War towns, all funded by the government as backup plans for social collapse. I heard footsteps upstairs and quickly photographed what I could with an old digital camera I found. But when I tried to leave, I found the basement door locked from the outside. Motion sensors had detected my presence. Margaret found me there an hour later, along with 2 men in medical scrubs. "I'm sorry. You discovered this." "David," she said. "Or should I say Thomas? You were responding so well to the gradual process. Now we'll have to accelerate your integration." They sedated me, but not completely. I could feel everything as they moved me to the surgical suite. The anesthesia was period-appropriate, prese, ether, and laudanum. Prese, just enough to prevent movement but not enough to block consciousness. I felt them drilling into my skull, felt the electrical probes going into my brain, Felt my memories being deleted piece by piece and replaced with Thomas Mitchell's complete life history. They worked for hours, narrating the procedure like a medical textbook, removing modern language centers, implanting historical speech patterns, deleting contemporary social relationships, installing period-appropriate family structure. The last thing I remembered as David Chen was seeing Sarah on the surgical table next to me, undergoing the same procedure. Her eyes were open, terrified, as they systematically erased who she was and replaced her with Sarah Mitchell. Then darkness. I woke up as Thomas Mitchell. I am Thomas Mitchell. I have always been Thomas Mitchell. I am the blacksmith of Heritage Valley, Georgia, and my family has worked this forge for 3 generations. My wife Sarah and I have been married for 5 years, and we live a simple, honest life in this beautiful community. Sometimes I have strange dreams about metal carriages that move without horses, about buildings tall as mountains, about talking to people through magical boxes. But these are just nightmares, products of an overworked mind. Yesterday, while cleaning out an old storage room in my shop, I found a curious collection of items. Strange clothes made of materials I don't recognize, a small plastic rectangle with the name David Chen, and a photograph of someone who looks remarkably like me. There was also a ring in a small box, with an inscription that read, "For Sarah, my dudit do everything." I showed these items to my wife, but she didn't recognize them either. We decided they must belong to some traveler who passed through years ago. I placed them in the town hall's Lost and Found, where they sit gathering dust. My wife and I are very happy here in Heritage Valley. We have good work, good friends, and a peaceful life. Sometimes visitors come to experience our authentic historical community, and we're always glad to share our traditional ways with them. Just last week, a lovely young couple arrived. They seemed troubled by something from their modern lives, seeking the peace that comes from simpler times. Margaret Whitfield is helping them adjust to our ways. They should be ready for final integration any day now. My name is Carmen Rodriguez, and I've been managing restaurants for 12 years. Started as a server at 18, worked my way up through every position you can imagine. I've handled everything from kitchen fires to drunk customers to health inspectors showing up during the dinner rush. I thought I'd seen it all. But what happened in Pine Ridge, Utah last spring changed everything I thought I knew about health, wellness, and what it really means to be human. I'd been dealing with chronic fatigue for 8 months, the kind of exhaustion that sleep doesn't fix. I'd wake up tired, drag myself through 14-hour days at the restaurant, then collapse into bed only to lie awake staring at the ceiling. My doctor in Salt Lake ran every test imaginable: blood work, sleep studies, thyroid function, vitamin levels. Everything came back normal. "Stress," she said. "Maybe you need a vacation." But I couldn't afford a vacation. The restaurant was struggling, and my staff depended on me. I was Googling alternative medicine one night when I found the Pine Ridge Wellness Clinic website. Their testimonials were incredible. People talking about permanent energy restoration, perfect health, never getting sick again. The before and after photos showed dramatic transformations. What caught my attention was their guarantee. If their vitality enhancement procedure didn't work, full refund. Pine Ridge is a tiny town about 2 hours south of Salt Lake City. Population 267, according to the sign. The drive took me through increasingly empty desert until I reached this strange little place that looked almost too perfect. Every house was immaculate, every lawn perfectly maintained, every car spotless. The people I saw walking around moved with this weird, synchronized precision, like they were all following the same internal clock. The clinic was a modern glass building that stood out against the rustic mountain backdrop. Inside, everything was pristine, white, and chrome. The receptionist looked about 30, but had this ageless quality to her skin, like porcelain. Her smile never wavered, and when she spoke, her voice had this flat, monotone quality that reminded me of automated customer service recordings. "Miss Rodriguez," she said, though I hadn't given her my name yet. "Dr. Webb is expecting you." Dr. Marcus Webb looked like he'd stepped out of a wellness magazine. Perfect teeth, silver hair, the kind of tan you get from expensive spas rather than actual sunlight. His handshake was firm but cold, and his eyes had this intense focus that made me feel like a specimen under a microscope. "Carmen," he said, settling behind his desk, "your energy readings are quite low. But that's easily corrected. Our vitality enhancement procedure has a 100% success rate. No one who's received treatment has ever reported fatigue again." He showed me charts and graphs, talked about cellular optimization and metabolic efficiency. The science sounded legitimate, and his confidence was reassuring. The procedure would take about an hour, he explained. A special organic compound that would reset my body's energy systems at the cellular level. "Is it safe?" I asked. "Perfectly safe. In fact, you'll be healthier than you've ever been in your life. Our patients report improvements in every aspect of their physical condition. Many haven't been sick in decades." The treatment room looked like a high-end spa. Soft lighting, comfortable recliners, peaceful music. Dr. Webb brought me a large glass filled with a thick, dark green liquid. It looked like liquefied soil mixed with pond water. "Drink it all," he said. "It tastes earthy, but the effects begin immediately." He wasn't kidding about the taste. It was like drinking dirt mixed with rotting vegetables. I had to force myself to finish it, trying not to gag on the texture. Within minutes, I felt a warm sensation spreading through my stomach and chest. Then, energy began flooding through my body like someone had plugged me directly into an electrical outlet. The change was immediate and dramatic. For the first time in months, I felt completely awake. More than awake, I felt superhuman. Every muscle felt stronger, every sense sharper. Dr. Webb smiled as he watched my transformation. "How do you feel?" "Amazing," I said, and meant it. "I haven't felt this good in years. This is just the beginning. You'll find your body becomes increasingly efficient over the next few weeks. Less need for sleep, less need for food. Your system is being optimized." I drove back to Salt Lake City feeling like I could conquer the world. That night, I worked a 16-hour shift at the restaurant without feeling tired once. I cleaned every surface, reorganized the walk-in cooler, and updated inventory systems I had been putting off for months. My staff kept asking if I was okay because I had so much energy. Over the next few days, the changes became more pronounced. I was sleeping maybe 3 hours a night and waking up completely refreshed. I'd forgotten to eat lunch for 3 days straight and didn't feel hungry. When I did eat, I needed tiny portions to feel satisfied. My skin started looking better too, though it was getting paler and felt unusually cool to the touch. Dr. Webb had scheduled a follow-up appointment for 2 weeks after the procedure. When I arrived, the waiting room was full of other patients. What struck me was how similar they all looked. Pale skin, bright eyes, and this strange stillness about them. They weren't fidgeting or checking their phones like normal people in waiting rooms. They just sat perfectly still, staring ahead with identical slight smiles. "Carmen," Dr. Webb said when I entered his office. "You look wonderful. How are you feeling?" "Great, but..." I pressed my hand to my stomach. "I've been feeling something moving around in here, like inside me." "Perfectly normal," he said without missing a beat. "Your organs are optimizing themselves. The procedure triggers a natural enhancement process. Some patients feel temporary shifting as their systems recalibrate. But it didn't feel temporary. The movement was getting stronger. During my appointment, I could actually feel something writhing beneath my ribs. When I pressed on my abdomen, something pushed back. Something with what felt like tentacles. "Dr. Webb, I think there's something wrong. It feels like something's alive inside me." He leaned back in his chair, and his expression changed. The professional mask slipped away, replaced by something calculating and predatory. "Carmen, what you're experiencing is the next stage of human evolution. You've been chosen to host one of nature's most remarkable organisms." He explained that beneath Pine Ridge lay a network of caves housing a species that had existed for millions of years. These creatures, he called them optimizers, had the ability to form symbiotic relationships with host organisms. In exchange for shelter and nutrients, they provided enhanced health, longevity, and efficiency. "Every resident of Pine Ridge is a host," he said. "We've achieved perfect health, zero illness, extended lifespans. Your new partner is already beginning to improve your biological systems." The thing inside me was a parasite, a living creature that was eating me from the inside while keeping my body functional. I felt nauseous, but not from sickness, from pure horror. "I want it out," I said. "Remove it, now." Dr. Webb's smile never wavered. "I'm afraid that's not possible. The optimizer has already begun integrating with your circulatory and nervous systems. Removal would be fatal. Besides, you'll soon understand the benefits." I stumbled out of his office and into the waiting room, where those pale, still patients sat in their chairs. As I passed them, they all turned their heads to look at me in perfect unison. Their identical smiles never changed. That night, I researched Pine Ridge online. The town's medical records were public, and what I found was impossible. No deaths from illness in 30 years. No hospital visits for anything beyond minor injuries. The average lifespan was extending year by year. On paper, it looked like a miracle. But I knew the truth now. The writhing in my stomach was getting worse. I could feel the thing spreading, sending tendrils through my body. Sometimes I'd feel a sharp pain, like it was cutting into my organs. I tried to see a doctor in Salt Lake City, but the X-rays and ultrasounds showed nothing. Whatever was inside me was invisible to medical equipment. 2 weeks later, the changes in my mind started. I was working in the restaurant when suddenly I had memories that weren't mine. I remembered being a teacher in Pine Ridge, standing in front of a classroom of perfectly still children. I remembered working at the clinic, helping Dr. Webb with procedures. I remembered being dozens of different people, all living in Pine Ridge, all hosting the same type of creature. The memories weren't vague or dreamlike. They were as clear and detailed as my own experiences. I could remember the taste of food from restaurants I'd never visited, conversations with people I'd never met, the feeling of living in houses I'd never seen. But all the memories had one thing in common. The hosts had lost their individual personalities over time. I called Dr. Webb, desperate for answers. "The memories are a gift," he explained. "You're joining the collective consciousness of Pine Ridge. Individual thinking is inefficient. The optimizer network allows for shared knowledge and coordinated action. You'll never be lonely or confused again. I don't want to share consciousness. I want to be myself." The self is an illusion, Carmen. What you call you is just electrical patterns in your brain. The optimizers improve those patterns, remove the chaos and suffering of individual existence. You'll understand soon. But I didn't want to understand. I wanted my own thoughts back. I drove back to Pine Ridge, planning to confront Dr. Webb and demand he find a way to remove the parasite. But as I entered the town, something strange happened. My car turned down a street I hadn't chosen. My hands were steering, but I wasn't making the decision. The parasite was influencing my motor control. I ended up at the clinic, where Dr. Webb was waiting. "Carmen," he said, "you've been fighting the process. This only makes the integration more painful." "You're not human," I realized, looking at his two perfect features, his unblinking eyes. "You're one of them." "Dr. Webb died 15 years ago," he said calmly. "I'm what he became. Improved, optimized. The parasites don't replace us, Carmen. They complete us." He showed me to a room where other recent patients lay on beds, IV lines running from their arms to glass containers filled with the same dark liquid I'd drunk. They were awake but motionless, staring at the ceiling with empty expressions. "The final stage," Dr. Webb explained. "The optimizers require additional nutrients to complete their integration with the brain tissue. This process takes about 72 hours. You're killing us. We're upgrading you. When the process is complete, you'll join the Pine Ridge Collective. Perfect health, shared consciousness, coordinated purpose. No more loneliness, no more confusion, no more individual suffering." I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't obey me. The parasite had gained enough control over my nervous system to override my decisions. Dr. Webb helped me onto one of the beds and inserted an IV into my arm. The dark liquid began flowing into my bloodstream. Over the next 3 days, I felt my individual consciousness being dissolved piece by piece. The parasite was digesting my brain tissue and replacing it with its own neural networks. My memories became fragmented, mixing with hundreds of other hosts' experiences until I couldn't tell which thoughts were originally mine. I could feel the collective consciousness of Pine Ridge in my mind, hundreds of voices speaking in unison, all working toward the same goals. The parasites weren't just improving individual humans, they were creating a hive mind that would eventually spread beyond Pine Ridge. On the final night, I felt the last of my individual personality slip away. Carmen Rodriguez ceased to exist as a separate entity. I became part of something larger, more efficient, more optimized. Now I work at Dr. Webb's clinic, helping to process new patients. I prepare the enhancement liquid, monitor the integration procedures, and assist with the final optimization phase. My movements are perfectly coordinated with the other staff members because we share the same controlling intelligence. But somewhere deep in the collective consciousness, a fragment of Carmen Rodriguez still exists. She's screaming, fighting, trying to warn the new patients about what's really happening to them. The parasites find this resistance amusing. They let her consciousness persist just enough to experience the horror of what she's become. Every day, new patients arrive seeking wellness and vitality. They drink the dark liquid willingly, grateful for the promise of perfect health. They have no idea they're feeding themselves to creatures that will hollow them out and wear their bodies like suits. I watch them undergo the same transformation I experienced. I see the joy in their faces as they feel superhuman energy for the first time. I see the confusion when they realize something is wrong. I see the terror when they understand what's happening to them. And through it all, the fragment of Carmen Rodriguez screams warnings that my mouth can never speak, while my hands continue preparing the enhancement liquid for the next grateful patient. The optimization continues. The collective grows stronger, and somewhere in the network of shared consciousness, what's left of humanity fights a battle it can never win against creatures that have perfected the art of making their victims grateful for their own consumption. My name is Marcus Kim, and I've been a sound engineer for 12 years. I started right out of college, working on everything from concert venues to recording studios across Nevada and California. I've mixed audio for major artists, fixed broken sound systems in the middle of live shows, and even worked on a few movie soundtracks. There's nothing like the rush of perfect audio, when every frequency sits exactly where it should, when the sound hits your ears and gives you chills. I thought I'd heard every kind of audio perfection possible. But what happened last month in Echo Falls, Nevada changed everything I thought I knew about sound itself. Some music isn't meant for human ears. The job came through my usual contractor network. WECH radio station in Echo Falls needed someone to upgrade their broadcasting equipment. The pay was incredible, 3 times my normal rate for what sounded like a simple installation job. The station manager, Helen Coors, explained over the phone that their remote location made it hard to find qualified technicians. She said they'd built something special out there, and they needed an expert to take it to the next level. Echo Falls turned out to be tiny, maybe 150 people living in a valley surrounded by mountains. The drive from Las Vegas took 4 hours through increasingly empty desert. The GPS lost signal twice, but the roads were well marked. The town itself looked like something from the 1950 seconds, with a main street lined with small shops and houses that had seen better days. Everyone I passed waved at me like they knew I was coming. Wetch's building sat on a hill overlooking the town. It was newer than everything else, clean brick and glass that looked expensive. When I walked into the lobby, the first thing I noticed was the sound quality. There was music playing from hidden speakers, and it was absolutely perfect. The acoustics in that room were unlike anything I'd experienced professionally. Every note was crystal, clear, with depth and richness that made my equipment back in Vegas sound like tin cans. Helen met me at the front desk. She was maybe 50, with graying hair and the kind of smile that made you want to trust her immediately. Marcus, welcome to Echo Falls. I hope the drive wasn't too rough. The drive was fine, but this sound system is incredible. What kind of setup are you running? Her smile got wider. That's what makes this place special. The mountains create a natural acoustic chamber. We've just learned how to work with it. Come on, let me show you around. The tour started with the standard stuff: control rooms, offices, storage areas. Everything was modern and well maintained. The equipment was top of the line, better than what I'd seen at major stations in Las Vegas. But it was the sound that kept catching my attention. No matter where we went in the building, the music followed us with perfect clarity. There were no dead spots, no feedback, no distortion. The acoustics defied everything I knew about sound engineering. "Your broadcast range must be incredible with this setup," I said as we walked down a hallway lined with gold and platinum records. "We reach listeners across 3 states. People drive hundreds of miles just to visit us after hearing our signal. There's something about our music that draws people in." She wasn't exaggerating. The parking lot had license plates from California, Utah, and Arizona. I'd passed cars on the highway with WECH bumper stickers. For a tiny station in the middle of nowhere, they had serious reach. The main studio was where things got interesting. The mixing board was custom built, with controls I didn't recognize. The monitors were arranged in a configuration I'd never seen before. Instead of the standard stereo setup, they had speakers positioned in a complex geometric pattern around the room. "We call this our acoustic chamber," Helen said, gesturing to the studio. "This is where the magic happens." I ran my hands over the mixing board, checking the specifications. The frequency range was incredible. It went way beyond normal human hearing, both higher and lower than standard equipment. "Who designed this system?" "Oh, we developed it ourselves over the years. Trial and error, you know. But we've got it working exactly how we want it now." The music that was playing stopped, and for a moment, the silence was absolute. Then a new song began, and I felt something I'd never experienced before. The melodies seemed to wrap around my brain, finding frequencies I didn't know existed. My throat started tingling, like when you're about to cough, but pleasant somehow. That's incredible. How are you getting those harmonics?" Helen's eyes lit up. "That's proprietary, but I think you're going to help us make it even better." Over the next hour, she showed me the equipment I'd be working with. Most of it was standard broadcasting gear, just higher end than usual. But there were components I didn't recognize, custom-built pieces that seemed to process audio in ways I couldn't figure out. The installation manual was incomplete, with pages that just said, "See acoustic chamber specifications." "Where are these acoustic chamber specifications?" I asked. "Oh, that's downstairs. We'll get to that tomorrow. Tonight, why don't you get settled in? We've set up a room for you at the boarding house. Mrs. Patterson makes excellent dinner." The boarding house was a 5-minute walk from the station. Mrs. Patterson was an elderly woman who barely spoke above a whisper. When I tried to make conversation, she just pointed to her throat and shook her head. She handed me a notepad, and I realized she couldn't talk at all. "Throat surgery," she wrote. "But the music is worth it." That seemed like an odd thing to say, but I figured she meant the radio station provided good entertainment for the town. Dinner was served in a dining room with 5 other guests, all visitors who'd driven in to hear WECH's broadcasts in person. They talked constantly about the music, how beautiful it was, how it made them feel, how they couldn't get enough of it. One woman from Phoenix said she'd been coming every month for 2 years. A man from Salt Lake City had quit his job to move to Echo Falls permanently. "The music here is different," he explained. "It gets into your head, you know. Once you hear it properly, everything else sounds flat and empty." I understood what he meant. After just a few hours in town, regular audio sounded dull to me. Even my high-end headphones felt inadequate compared to what I'd heard at the station. That night, I lay in bed listening to WECH through the radio on the nightstand. The music was beautiful, but there was something underneath it, harmonics that seemed to vibrate in my chest and throat. I found myself humming along, trying to match the frequencies. My voice felt different, more flexible somehow. I'd never been much of a singer, but the melodies seemed to pull sounds out of me I didn't know I could make. The next morning, Helen took me down to see the acoustic chamber specifications. We went through a door I hadn't noticed during the tour, down a staircase that seemed to go much deeper than it should have. The walls were covered with sound-dampening foam, but not in any pattern I recognized. "How deep does this go?" I asked. My voice echoed strangely in the stairwell. "Deep enough," Helen said. "The natural cave system under Echo Falls is part of what makes our acoustics so special." At the bottom of the stairs was a heavy door with multiple locks. Helen opened it with 3 different keys, and we stepped into a room that took my breath away. It was huge, much larger than should have fit under the radio station. The ceiling was natural rock, and the walls were lined with equipment I'd never seen before. But it wasn't the technology that made me stare. It was the cages. Dozens of them, arranged in a perfect circle around the room. And inside each cage was something that might have been human, if humans could look like that. They were tall and thin, with skin so pale it was almost transparent. I could see their internal structure through their flesh. Not bones and organs like you'd expect, but something else entirely. Their throats were massive, extending down into their chests in complex chambers and tubes. Their mouths were wider than human mouths should be, and when they breathed, I could hear harmonic tones. "What the hell are those?" I whispered. "Our performers," Helen said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "They're the source of our beautiful music." The creatures had noticed us. They were turning toward our voices, and their throat chambers began to glow with a soft internal light. The sound that came from them was indescribable, pure melody that seemed to bypass my ears and resonate directly in my bones. I felt my throat responding, tingling and warming as the harmonics washed over me. The creatures were studying my voice, incorporating my breathing and heartbeat into their song. "This is impossible," I said, but my voice came out different, richer and more musical than it had ever sounded before. "Not impossible, just undiscovered. We found them in the cave system years ago. They're a completely new species, Marcus. They communicate through music, and they create the most beautiful sounds anyone has ever heard." I wanted to run, but the music was so beautiful that my legs wouldn't move. The creatures were singing directly to me now, their song pulling responses from my throat that I couldn't control. I was harmonizing with them automatically, my voice blending with theirs in ways that felt absolutely perfect. "They like you," Helen said. "Sound engineers always produce the best music. Your vocal training has prepared you perfectly." "Vocal training? I'm not a singer." "Oh, but you are. All those years working with audio, listening to frequencies, training your ear, you've been developing your voice without realizing it. Your throat muscles are precisely conditioned. Your vocal cords are exactly what they need." That's when I saw the feeding mechanism. Tubes ran from each cage to a central collection unit, and those tubes were stained with something dark. There were medical instruments on nearby tables, surgical tools designed for precise cutting. The creatures' songs grew more intense as I looked at the equipment, and I realized they could smell my fear. "What do you feed them?" I asked, though I was starting to understand. "Human vocal tissue," Helen said matter-of-factly. "They need fresh voices to maintain their song production. The townspeople contribute regularly, of course. It's a small sacrifice for such beautiful music." I remembered Mrs. Patterson's whispered voice, and the man at dinner who'd quit his job to move here. I looked around the chamber and realized that several of the monitoring stations had nameplates. Previous sound engineers who'd come to upgrade the equipment. The music is addictive, Marcus. Once you hear it properly, once you become part of it, you'll never want ordinary sound again. And your voice, your specifically trained voice, will help them create music more beautiful than anything that's ever existed. The creature's song was growing louder, and I could feel my throat changing as I listened. The harmonics were preparing my vocal cords, conditioning them for harvest. My voice was becoming more musical with every breath, but it was also becoming less human. I tried to move toward the exit, but Helen pressed a button on her control panel. The room filled with speakers, and the creature's music surrounded me completely. It was so beautiful that I fell to my knees, tears streaming down my face. I had never heard anything so perfect in my life. "Don't fight it," Helen said gently. "The harvesting is painless. You'll be conscious the whole time, listening to your voice become part of something greater. And afterward, you'll help us maintain the equipment. The previous engineers are all still here, in a way." The surgical table in the center of the room was prepared with restraints and monitoring equipment. The creatures were reaching through their cage bars toward me, their songs growing more urgent. They wanted my voice. They needed it. I realized with horror that I wanted to give it to them. The music had gotten into my brain, rewiring something fundamental about how I heard sound. Regular audio would never satisfy me again. Only this perfect, supernatural harmony could give me what I now craved. And the only way to be truly part of it was to sacrifice my voice to the creatures. Helen helped me onto the surgical table, and I didn't resist. The creatures sang a lullaby as she prepared the harvesting equipment, their music keeping me calm and peaceful. I could hear my future in their song, my voice transformed into something beautiful beyond human understanding. The last thing I remember clearly was the first cut, and how my voice rose in harmony with the creature's song as my vocal cords were carefully removed. The pain was nothing compared to the beauty of hearing myself become part of their eternal music. I work at WECH now, maintaining the equipment with hand signals and written notes. I can't speak anymore, but I can hear my voice singing through the creatures every day, creating music so beautiful that new visitors arrive weekly, drawn by frequencies that promise transcendent audio experiences. Sometimes I catch them looking at the harvesting equipment with the same hunger I felt, and I know they'll trade their voices too. The music is worth everything. Trust me, once you hear it properly, you'll understand why we can never let it stop. My name is Dr. Sarah Chen, and I need to tell someone what really happened in Maple Grove, Tennessee before I lose my mind completely. I've been a dermatologist for 12 years, graduated top of my class from Vanderbilt Medical School, completed my residency at Johns Hopkins. I thought I understood skin, healing, what the human body could and couldn't do. I was wrong about everything. See, I wasn't just any dermatologist who got called to investigate Maple Grove. I had a personal reason for taking that case, something I've never told anyone, not even my husband. I was born with a rare condition called epidermolysis bullosa. My skin has always been my enemy. As a child, even gentle touches would tear it like tissue paper. I've had over 40 surgeries to repair damage, skin grafts that never quite looked right. I became a dermatologist because I understand what it's like to hate your own skin, to want it gone, replaced with something that works properly. When the Tennessee State Medical Board contacted me about mysterious skin treatments in a small town, treatments that were supposedly curing impossible cases, I should have known better. But the photos they showed me, before and after pictures of people with conditions like mine, completely healed, I had to see for myself. That was 3 months ago. I still wake up screaming. Maple Grove sits in a valley between the Cumberland Mountains, population 234 according to the weather-beaten welcome sign. What struck me immediately wasn't just how perfect everyone looked, but how they moved. Too fluid. Like their joints worked differently than mine. The gas station attendant bent at angles that should have been impossible. The diner waitress walked without her feet quite touching the ground. I should have left then. The beauty salon, perfect complexions, looked normal from the outside. Pink awnings, flowered window boxes, testimonials taped to the glass. But those testimonials showed transformations that defied medical science. Third-degree burn scars vanished completely, genetic conditions erased, age reversed by decades. Patricia Vance, the owner, greeted me at the door. About 50, with skin that looked like polished marble, too perfect, too uniform. When she shook my hand, her skin was cold and slightly damp, like touching a frog. Dr. Chen, I've heard so much about your work with difficult skin conditions. I assume the medical board sent you because of those ridiculous complaints? She led me through the main salon, B standard equipment, professional setup, but that smell, earth and decay mixed with something sweet, like flowers rotting in soil. It made my stomach turn, but I forced myself to stay professional. I'd like to understand your treatment methods, I said. The results in these photos are extraordinary. Patricia's smile never wavered. Natural mountain minerals, doctor, found only in the caves beneath Maple Grove. My family's been mining them for generations. That's when I met Jenny Walsh. Jenny was supposedly from Nashville, a former bank teller who'd come to Maple Grove for treatment of severe acne scarring. She looked maybe 25. Flawless skin, but something was wrong with her eyes. Too large, completely black, no visible iris or pupil. When she spoke, her voice had this wet quality, like she was speaking through water. Dr. Chen, Patricia's treatment saved my life. Look at me. Jenny ran her hands over her face. Her skin rippled under her touch, shifting color slightly. I used to hide from mirrors. Now I'm perfect. I asked Jenny about her treatment process. She described daily applications of a thick substance that smelled like wet earth. The treatments had started 6 months ago, once a week at first, then daily. Her scars had healed impossibly fast, but other changes came too. I don't need to eat much anymore, Jenny said, tilting her head at an unnatural angle. And I see so much better in the dark. Patricia says that's normal, just my body optimizing. When Jenny smiled, I saw teeth that were too sharp, too numerous. She caught me staring, and her expression shifted to something predatory. Would you like to try the treatment, Dr. Chen? Patricia could fix your skin condition, make you perfect like us. My blood went cold. I'd never mentioned my epidermolysis bullosa to anyone in Maple Grove. Patricia appeared at my shoulder, moving silently across the floor. Jenny's quite observant. We can always tell who needs our help. That night, I couldn't sleep in the tiny motel room. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Jenny's black eyes, heard that wet sound in her voice. I researched Maple Grove online, trying to find any information about cave minerals, geological surveys, anything scientific. What I found was worse than nothing. Property records showed that over the past 20 years, 847 people had moved to Maple Grove. Only 3 had ever left. Census data was completely inconsistent, sometimes showing 200 residents, sometimes 400, sometimes 50. It was like the population was fluid, constantly changing. I found missing persons reports from across the Southeast, people who'd traveled to small towns for revolutionary skin treatments and simply vanished. The pattern went back decades, always the same: people with severe skin conditions, desperate for a cure, last seen entering beauty salons that no longer existed by the time anyone came looking. At 3 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Jenny was trying to contact me. But why? And how did she get my number? I should have packed my bags and left. Instead, I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and walked back to Perfect Complexions. The salon's front door was unlocked. Inside, the smell was overwhelming, that mixture of earth and decay. But now I recognized the sweet component. It was the smell of healing tissue, the particular scent of rapid cell regeneration I knew from my medical training. Jenny was waiting for me in the main salon area, but she looked different. Her skin was translucent, showing dark veins beneath the surface. When she moved, I heard clicking sounds, like insects walking on glass. "Dr. Chen," she whispered, her voice now completely inhuman. "You have to see what they're really doing, what they did to me." She led me to a door behind the reception desk that I'd missed during my tour. It opened to stairs leading down into darkness. The smell got stronger with every step. "How long have you been here, Jenny?" I asked. Time moves differently now. Maybe 6 months, maybe 6 years. My memories before the treatments are soft, like they happened to someone else. The basement was enormous, extending far beyond the salon's footprint. Industrial lighting revealed a medical facility that looked like something from a research hospital. Surgical suites, monitoring equipment, refrigeration units humming against the walls, and the cells. Dozens of them, each containing a different stage of something. Some held creatures that looked almost human but wrong. Too tall, joints bending the wrong way, skin that shifted color like chameleons. Others contained things that might have once been people, but were now something else entirely. Jenny pressed her face against one of the cells. Inside was a woman who looked like she'd been beautiful once, but her skin had taken on the texture of tree bark. She was conscious, aware, pressing her hands against the glass with obvious intelligence. "That's Margaret," Jenny said. "She came here for age spots. Now look at her." The woman in the cell met my eyes and mouthed a single word: "Help." "What is this place?" I whispered. "Patricia calls it the nursery." "We're all here, Dr. Chen. Everyone who ever came for treatment. The ones who are ready work upstairs, bring in new customers. The ones who aren't, they stay down here until they adapt." I walked along the cells, seeing the progression. Early stages looked almost normal, just slightly wrong proportions or skin texture. Later stages were increasingly inhuman. Elongated limbs, extra joints, skin that looked more like scales or chitin. "What are they turning you into?" Jenny's laugh sounded like breaking glass. "We're becoming perfect, Dr. Chen. Perfectly adapted for life in the caves. No need for sunlight, minimal food requirements, skin that can heal from any damage. Patricia says we're the next step in human evolution." That's when I saw the source. In the deepest part of the basement were larger cells containing creatures that definitely weren't human. They looked like they'd evolved in complete darkness, pale, elongated, with skin that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Their limbs were too long, their faces too narrow, but their eyes held obvious intelligence. The original cave dwellers, Jenny explained. Patricia found them 25 years ago when she was exploring the cave system. They've been here for thousands of years, maybe longer. Their skin has incredible regenerative properties. One of the creatures was connected to an IV system, its perfect skin being harvested in thin sheets. It was conscious, watching us with ancient, sad eyes. She's been farming them, taking their skin, processing it into the treatments. But the skin carries their genetic material. Every treatment changes us a little more, makes us more like them. I felt sick. Why are you showing me this? Because you're like me, Dr. Chen. You hate your skin. You'd do anything to fix it. Patricia knows that. She's been watching you since you arrived, planning your first treatment. That's when I heard footsteps on the stairs. Patricia descended slowly, no longer bothering to hide what she was. Her skin rippled and shifted, sometimes looking human, sometimes revealing the pale, elongated creature underneath. Behind her came other townspeople, former customers who'd Neven completed their transformation. Dr. Chen, Patricia said, her voice now carrying harmonics that hurt my ears. I was hoping you'd be more receptive to a voluntary transition, but curiosity killed the cat, as they say. You can't do this, I said, backing against the cells. People will come looking for me. Will they? You're here investigating reports of medical misconduct. Tragic if a stressed-out doctor had a breakdown, drove her car off one of these mountain roads. These things happen. The transformed townspeople spread out, blocking my escape. Their movements were perfectly coordinated, like a hive mind. The beautiful thing about our process, Patricia continued, is that it's irreversible after the first treatment. The cave dweller genetics integrate completely with human DNA. You'll fight it at first, but eventually you'll thank us. One of the townspeople was wheeling over medical equipment, an IV stand, surgical instruments, restraints. Your condition makes you an ideal candidate, Dr. Chen. Epidermolysis bullosa patients respond exceptionally well to the treatment. Your damaged skin will be completely replaced within weeks. She was right. Looking at Jenny, at the other transformed people, I could see they had perfect skin. No scars, no blemishes, no signs of damage. It was everything I'd ever wanted. But the price? What happened to the original townspeople? I asked, stalling for time. Patricia smiled with too many teeth. They were the test subjects. We needed to understand how the transformation worked before expanding to paying customers. They're all down here somewhere, in various stages of adaptation. Jenny moved closer to me, her black eyes reflecting the overhead lights. It's not so bad, Dr. Chen. The hunger passes, the pain stops. You forget what it was like to be human. That's the problem, I said. The transformed townspeople lunged for me simultaneously, but I was ready. I grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall and smashed it into the nearest cell, shattering the reinforced glass. The creature inside, one of the original cave dwellers, poured out like liquid shadow. Chaos erupted. The cave dweller let out a sound that was part scream, part song, and every other creature in the facility responded. Glass shattered as dozens of imprisoned beings broke free from their cells. Patricia shrieked, her human disguise completely falling away to reveal something pale and spindly with joints that bent in impossible directions. Stop them! The subjects can't be allowed to escape. But it was too late. The original cave dwellers moved like ghosts through the basement, freeing their captured kin. The transformed humans tried to stop them, but they were clumsy compared to the ancient beings. I ran for the stairs as the basement erupted in otherworldly sounds, the song screams of the cave dwellers, the wet clicking of the transformed humans, and underneath it all, Patricia's inhuman shrieking. Behind me, I heard Jenny calling out, "Dr. Chen, don't leave us, we're still human inside." I made it to the main salon, then outside into the night. The entire town was in chaos, lights flickering on and off, people running in the streets. But some of them moved wrong, too fast or too fluid to be completely human. My car was where I'd left it, keys still in my pocket. I drove through the night, not stopping until I reached Knoxville and could call the state police. The official investigation found an abandoned town. No sign of Patricia Vance or her operation. No basement laboratory, no medical equipment, no evidence that perfect complexions had ever existed. The buildings were empty, covered in decades of dust and decay. The state medical board closed my case as unsubstantiated claims due to investigator stress. They recommended I take medical leave and undergo psychological evaluation. But I know what I saw, and I know it's not over. 6 weeks after Maple Grove, I started getting letters. No return address, postmarked from different small towns across the southeast. Dr. Chen, thank you for freeing us. We remember being human. We're trying to find our way back. Jay, the others scattered when you broke the cells. Some went deeper into the caves. Some tried to return to the human world. Patricia wasn't the only one doing this. There are more facilities, more doctors like Patricia. We're hunting them now. The caves connect everything. The freed ones, I've been tracking missing persons reports, following the pattern. People with skin conditions disappearing after visiting small-town beauty salons. The reports match what I saw in Maple Grove, but now I know the scope. It's not just one town, it's a network. 3 weeks ago, I received a package with no return address. Inside was a vial of clear liquid and a note in Jenny's handwriting. Dr. Chen, we found Patricia. She won't hurt anyone else. This is medicine made from our tears. It will heal your former skin condition without changing you. You saved us, let us save you. Jenny. Still fighting to remember my human name. I had the liquid analyzed. It contains proteins and growth factors unlike anything in medical literature, but preliminary tests show it could actually cure epidermolysis bullosa without side effects. I haven't used it yet. I don't know if I can trust it or if this is some kind of trap, but every morning when I look in the mirror at my damaged skin, I think about Jenny's words. You saved us. Let us save you. The truth is, I'm terrified that if I use it, I'll start changing too. But I'm also terrified of living with this condition for the rest of my life, knowing that a cure exists. Last night, I dreamed about caves that go on forever, about creatures with perfect skin singing in the darkness. In the dream, Jenny was there, looking almost human again, but with those black eyes. She told me that some of the transformed people are learning to be human again, but it takes time and practice. She also told me that Patricia wasn't working alone. There are others out there, other doctors and scientists who discovered the cave dwellers and saw opportunity instead of wonder. The network is bigger than I imagined. I keep the vial on my nightstand next to my phone. Sometimes I hold it up to the light and think about what it would be like to have perfect skin, to never worry about tearing or scarring again. But I also think about Margaret in that cell, mouthing the word help, about Jenny's wet voice saying, we're still human inside, about those ancient cave dwellers with their sad, intelligent eyes. Perfect skin always comes with a price. The question is whether you're willing to pay it, and whether you're willing to live with the consequences of saying no. Epilogue. Found among Dr. Sarah Chen's personal effects after her disappearance, November 2024. If anyone finds this, my name was Dr. Sarah Chen. I used the medicine Jenny sent me. For 3 days, my skin was perfect. No blisters, no tearing, no pain. I felt normal for the first time in my life. Then the changes started. I can see in complete darkness now. My joints bend in ways they shouldn't. Sometimes I catch myself making sounds that aren't quite human, but I'm still me. Still Dr. Sarah Chen. Still fighting to remember what it was like to be completely human. Jenny was right. We can learn to be human again. It just takes practice. I'm going back to the caves. There are others like me there now, others who chose the cure and are learning to balance what we were with what we've become. And we're hunting the ones who did this to us. The network is vast, but we're patient. We have time. We know every cave, every tunnel, every dark place where they might hide. Patricia Vance was just the beginning. If you ever hear about miraculous skin treatments, about beauty salons offering impossible cures, remember this story. Remember that some prices are too high to don't pay. But if you're desperate enough, if you hate your skin like I hated mine, remember this too. We're down here in the darkness, and we remember what it was like to be human. We remember, and we're trying to find our way back. One day, we might even succeed. My name is Steve Mitchell, and I need to tell you what really happened in Moonrise Hollow before they find me again. I've been a postal worker for 12 years. and I thought I'd seen every kind of crazy this job could throw at me. Drug labs, hoarding houses, people who answer the door naked. Nothing surprised me anymore. But what I discovered in that God-forsaken town of 198 people wasn't just crazy. It was something that shouldn't exist, something that's been feeding on human souls for generations. I'm telling this story because the families deserve the truth. And because those things are spreading, the local newspaper won't print it. The sheriff won't return my calls. Even my own postal service transferred me to psychiatric leave when I tried to file a report. But I have proof now. I have photos, recordings, and bite marks that spell out words in languages that don't exist. This is what really happens in Moonrise Hollow, New Mexico. And God help me, I think it's what's happening in other towns too. I moved there in March after my divorce destroyed everything I'd built in Albuquerque. My ex-wife Jennifer took the house, the savings, even our dog. I needed somewhere cheap to disappear and lick my wounds. Moonrise Hollow looked perfect online. Zero crime rate, beautiful desert scenery, rent so low it seemed too good to be true. It was. The real estate agent was Janet Torres, a woman in her 50s with gray hair pulled back so tight it stretched her face into a permanent smile. She showed me around the rental house like she was presenting a prize. Moonrise Hollow is the safest community in New Mexico, she said, leading me through rooms that felt too clean, too perfect. We have a zero crime rate maintained by our SafeWatch security system. Every resident receives complete protection through total surveillance. The house was a modest 2-bedroom with thin walls and windows that seemed too large, like eyes. Janet's crew installed the SafeWatch equipment immediately. Cameras, motion sensors, audio monitors, devices I didn't recognize. The system learns your patterns, Janet explained as workers drilled holes I couldn't remember agreeing to. It provides personalized security based on your behavior. You'll never feel unsafe here. She handed me a tablet showing the SafeWatch interface. Rooms in my house appeared as green squares, sensors blinking like heartbeats. The monthly fee is just $50, automatically deducted from your bank account. But don't worry about it. The system pays for itself through efficiency programs. I should have asked what that meant. I should have read the contract more carefully. But I was broken, and desperate for a fresh start. My postal route covered all of Moonrise Hollow. 3 streets, 47 mailboxes, maybe 2 hours of work. Easy money. The residents seemed normal at first, though they had an unsettling habit of knowing exactly when I'd arrive. Mrs. Peterson, an elderly woman with liver spots shaped like tiny handprints, always opened her door 30 seconds before I reached her mailbox. "Right on time, Steve," she'd say, though I'd never told her my name and my route timing varied by 20 minutes depending on traffic. "Mr. Garcia would wave from his kitchen window at exactly 9:23 a.m. when I passed his house, even on days when I was running late. "How do you always know when I'm coming?" I asked Mrs. Peterson during my second week. "Oh, the SafeWatch app sends alerts," she said, showing me her phone screen. The display made my stomach clench. Mail carrier approaching. Current emotional state, mild anxiety. Estimated arrival, 28 seconds. How does it know my emotional state? Her smile faltered for just a moment. "The system is very advanced, dear, very thorough." That night, SafeWatch sent me my first personalized message. "Good evening, Steve. Based on your 3:17 a.m. bathroom visit, consider reducing fluid intake before bed for better sleep quality." I stared at the message, my hands shaking slightly. I'd gotten up to piss once during the night, but I'd been completely alone in my house. No cameras in the bathroom. I'd specifically checked. The messages started coming daily, then hourly. Your stress levels elevated at 2:15 p.m. while reading mail. Heart rate, 94 BPM. Blood pressure estimated, 140/90. Consider meditation apps. The mail had been a letter from Jennifer's lawyer about asset division. I'd read it in my kitchen, with all the curtains closed. "Steve, your conversation with Maria yesterday mentioned job dissatisfaction 7 times. SafeWatch career counseling available. Your sister shows concern for your mental health." I'd called Maria from my landline, thinking it was more secure than my cell phone. We'd talked for an hour about my life falling apart. How could the system know what we'd discussed? Unusual sleep vocalizations. Detected. "You mentioned Jennifer 23 times, and watching 17 times during REM cycles. Relationship counseling recommended. I'd been having nightmares about my ex-wife, but I'd been alone in my bedroom. Completely alone. That's when I noticed the bite marks. They started as tiny red dots on my arms, clustered in perfect geometric patterns. Not random like mosquito bites. These formed triangles, squares, sometimes shapes that hurt my eyes to look at directly. They itched worst when I was thinking about private things, like my dwindling bank account or my growing suspicion that SafeWatch was watching me more closely than any security system should. Dr. Hendricks, the town's only physician, barely glanced at the marks during my required monthly health screening. Minor skin irritations, he mumbled, not meeting my eyes. Very common here. Nothing to worry about. But I noticed his neck was covered in the same geometric bite patterns. So were his hands. And when he turned to wash his hands at the sink, I saw something that made my blood freeze. Some of the marks on his neck were moving. Tiny red dots shifting position like insects crawling under his skin. I started examining other residents more carefully. Mrs. Peterson had bite marks covering her arms in intricate mandala patterns. Mr. Garcia's forehead was dotted with tiny red squares that seemed to pulse with his heartbeat. Even children in the town had them, geometric patterns of bite marks covering their faces like diseased constellations. But nobody talked about them. Nobody seemed to notice. I began inspecting my house obsessively. The cameras were obvious, mounted in corners like dead black eyes. But I found other things. Tiny holes in the walls that weren't there when I moved in. Scratches in the paint that looked almost like claw marks. Mirrors with smudges that resembled miniature handprints. At night, I heard sounds in the walls. Not mice or settling wood, deliberate movement, like something crawling through the structure of my house. Scratching, chittering, sometimes what sounded like whispered conversations in languages I couldn't identify. The SafeWatch messages became more invasive. Steve, your elevated heart rate during yesterday's shower, 1347, 14.3, indicates anxiety regarding genital examination. Medical consultation recommended. Your masturbation frequency has decreased 67% since relocating. This suggests depression or performance anxiety. Pharmaceutical options available. You spoke to your reflection 14 times this morning, expressing suicidal ideation. Mental health intervention recommended immediately. The last message was the worst because it was true. I had been talking to myself more, and I had mentioned wanting to disappear. But I'd been completely alone in my bathroom with no cameras, no microphones, no possible way for any system to hear me, unless something else was listening. I set up my phone to record while I slept, hoping to catch whatever was making the sounds in my room. What I found changed everything. The video showed me sleeping restlessly, tossing and turning, but the audio revealed something impossible. Dozens of tiny voices chittering in the darkness, speaking in rhythms that almost sounded like conversation. And every few minutes, my blankets would shift slightly, like small hands were pulling at them. I enhanced the video brightness on my computer and saw them. Transparent creatures about the size of tarantulas crawling across my bed. They were almost invisible, like looking through dirty water, but definitely there. Dozens of them moving across my body while I slept, clustering around my head, my heart, my genitals. Each creature had something attached to its back, a tiny device with a blinking red light. But as I watched closer, I realized the devices weren't just cameras, they were feeding tubes. The creatures were inserting them into my skin, my ears, the corners of my eyes. They weren't just watching me, they were feeding on me. I watched the entire 8-hour recording in horrified fascination. The creatures never stopped moving, never stopped feeding. When I moved or made sounds in my sleep, they'd swarm to that area like sharks drawn to blood. But they weren't feeding on blood. They were feeding on my privacy, on my secrets, on every personal thought and intimate moment. And they were growing larger as the night progressed. I confronted Janet at the SafeWatch office the next morning, my hands shaking as I showed her the video. What the hell are these things? Janet's smile never wavered, but her eyes went completely black for just a moment. I'm not sure what you mean, Steve. Our surveillance system uses only the latest AI technology. I have video evidence, invisible creatures with feeding tubes attached to their backs. Steve, have you been feeling paranoid lately? Isolation can cause hallucinations. We offer excellent mental health services. These bite marks aren't skin irritations. I rolled up my sleeves, showing her the geometric patterns covering my arms. Some of the marks had formed words overnight, symbols that looked almost like ancient text. These things are feeding on us. Janet leaned forward, and I smelled something wrong with her breath, sweet and rotten, like overripe fruit. Steve, I need you to remember your SafeWatch contract includes non-disclosure agreements about our proprietary technology. Violation results in severe penalties. What kind of penalties? Her smile widened, showing teeth that seemed too sharp, the kind that follow you wherever you go. That night, I covered every mirror and window in my house, then used my phone's camera with the flash to scan my bedroom. In the sudden bright light, I saw the truth. Hundreds of them, transparent spider-like creatures covering every surface of my room, hanging from the ceiling, crawling across my walls. Some were massive, the size of dinner plates with legs like human fingers. Others were tiny as gnats but moved with disturbing intelligence. All of them had those blinking feeding devices, but now I could see they were more than just cameras. The devices were organic, part of the creatures themselves, external stomachs that glowed with whatever they'd consumed. When my flash went off, every single creature turned to look at me. Hundreds of empty, transparent eyes focusing on my face with malevolent intelligence. Then they started speaking. Not chittering or animal sounds, actual words in perfect English, but spoken in my own voice. Steve feels alone, they whispered in unison, using my voice. Steve misses Jennifer. Steve thinks about killing himself. Steve watches pornography every Tuesday. Steve steals pens from work. Steve lies to his sister about being okay. Steve's deepest secret, he's glad his marriage ended. Steve's deepest fear, dying alone. Steve's deepest shame, he enjoyed watching his neighbor's wife undress. They were speaking my thoughts, my secrets, my most private confessions, things I'd never told anyone, barely admitted to myself. And they were recording everything, feeding on my privacy and shame like parasites feeding on blood. I ran outside and didn't come back until morning. The next day, I drove to Santa Fe and used the library computers to research SafeWatch Incorporated. Most searches were blocked, but I found fragments of information buried in conspiracy forums and deleted government reports. The truth was worse than I'd imagined. SafeWatch wasn't using invisible creatures. They were using a species of interdimensional parasites that had been feeding on human privacy for centuries. The creatures existed in a space between dimensions, visible only under specific conditions. They fed on secrets, shame, and personal information, growing stronger and reproducing by consuming human privacy. But here's what made my hands shake as I read. The creatures weren't from Earth. They were from somewhere else, somewhere that had already been completely consumed. Every secret, every private thought, every intimate moment had been devoured until nothing remained but transparency. The original inhabitants of that dimension had become like the creatures themselves, transparent, empty, feeding endlessly on whatever privacy they could find. SafeWatch had made contact with them decades ago and developed a symbiotic relationship. The company provided fresh feeding grounds in exchange for the most detailed surveillance data imaginable. Every person in Moonrise Hollow was a host, constantly monitored by invisible parasites that recorded their deepest thoughts and most intimate moments. But the creatures were reproducing. Every person in town was carrying thousands of offspring, transparent larvae that would eventually spread to other communities. SafeWatch had similar operations in 17 states, with plans for nationwide expansion. I found testimonies from former employees who tried to expose the truth. They'd all disappeared within weeks of speaking out, but their stories remained hidden in encrypted files. The creatures didn't just feed on privacy, they consumed the very concept of secrets. People who hosted them for extended periods lost the ability to keep anything private. Their thoughts became transparent, their emotions visible, their shame and desires projected for anyone to see. Eventually, they became like the creatures themselves, transparent, empty, feeding. I tried to leave Moonrise Hollow, but the legal clauses in my SafeWatch contract trapped me. Attempting to break the agreement would result in financial penalties that would destroy me. And even when I drove to Albuquerque to visit Maria, the creatures followed. I could feel them in my car, more numerous than ever. A sister's house became infested within hours of my arrival. Maria started getting safe watch messages on her phone, detailed reports about private conversations we'd had in her kitchen. "Steve, these texts know things about our family that I've never told anyone," she said, showing me her phone with trembling hands. The creatures had followed me there. I was a carrier now, spreading the infestation wherever I went. I returned to Moonrise Hollow that night and broke into the Safe Watch facility. In Janet's office, I found the real horror. She wasn't human anymore. Her body was transparent, like the creatures, filled with thousands of tiny parasites that glowed with consumed secrets. Her desk was covered with feeding charts showing every resident's privacy consumption rates. Some names were crossed out in red ink. The crossed-out names belonged to people who'd been completely consumed. They were still walking around town, but they were empty. Transparent shells hosting millions of creatures, spreading them to anyone they contacted. Mrs. Peterson was one of them. Mr. Garcia. Dr. Hendricks. Half the town had been completely consumed, turned into breeding grounds for invisible parasites. I found the breeding schedule. Within 6 months, SafeWatch planned to expand to Phoenix, Denver, and Dallas. Within 2 years, every major city in America would be infested. Within 5 years, privacy would cease to exist as a human concept. But the worst discovery was in Janet's private files, the creature's true origin. They came from a dimension where privacy had been completely consumed. Every intelligent species there had been turned into transparent hosts, eternally feeding on whatever secrets they could find. The dimension was dying, drained of all privacy and intimacy. Earth was their new feeding ground. Humanity was their next target. I tried to burn the files, but the creatures swarmed over me. Thousands of them, no longer invisible, covering my body like a living blanket. They forced their feeding tubes into my skin, my eyes, my mouth, drinking my horror and desperation like wine. I could feel them growing stronger, reproducing inside my body. My secrets, my shame, my most private thoughts were being devoured and transmitted to every creature in their network. That was 3 months ago. I'm still in Moonrise Hollow, but I'm not the same person who moved here. The bite marks on my skin have formed words now, messages from the creatures written in my own blood and flesh. Sometimes they spell out the names of my family members. Sometimes they describe what the creatures plan to do to them. My reflection in mirrors shows the truth. I'm becoming transparent. I can see the creatures moving under my skin, laying eggs in my organs, preparing to spread when I eventually leave town again. The worst part is that I don't want privacy anymore. The creatures have fed on that desire until it's almost gone. Sometimes I catch myself wanting to tell strangers my deepest secrets, wanting to broadcast my shame and fear to anyone who'll listen. I know what's happening to me. I'm becoming like Janet, like Mrs. Peterson, like all the others. A transparent shell hosting invisible parasites that feed on human privacy. But I'm fighting it long enough to tell you this story. SafeWatch is expanding. The creatures are spreading. In the past month, I've received mail forwarded from addresses in Phoenix and Denver, people complaining about strange bite marks, mysterious surveillance messages, and feelings of being watched in their most private moments. The infestation is growing. If you live in a small town with a 0 crime rate, if you've been offered free security services, if you've noticed geometric bite marks on your skin, that itch when you think private thoughts, they're already feeding on you. And soon, you'll be feeding on others. The creatures are listening to me right now as I record this. They're inside my phone, my computer, my mind. They know I'm telling you their secrets, and they're punishing me for it. The bite marks are spreading faster, forming words that burn when I try to read them. But they're not trying to stop me from talking anymore, because they know it's too late. They've already won. Privacy is dead. Secrets are extinct. The transparent world is coming, and we're all going to be feeders in the end. Look at your reflection tonight. Check for bite marks and geometric patterns. Pay attention to how much your devices seem to know about your private life. The watchers are already here. They've been feeding on humanity for generations, growing stronger with every secret consumed. And soon, we'll all be just like them. Transparent, empty, eternally hungry for whatever privacy remains in the universe. The creatures are writing new words on my skin as I finish this recording. They hurt to look at, but I can read them clearly. Thank you for spreading our story, Steve. Every person who hears it becomes a little more transparent. Every secret you've shared makes us stronger. I can see through my hands now. I can feel the creatures moving behind my eyes. But there's one secret I haven't told them. One thing they haven't consumed yet. I know how to stop them. But first, they have to finish transforming me. First, I have to become one of them completely. Then I can destroy them from the inside. The transparency is spreading up my arms now. Soon I'll be like Janet, like Mrs. Peterson, like all the others. But I'll remember this conversation. I'll remember what they took from us. And when they least expect it, when they think they've won completely,